This is Punchestown in Southern Ireland, but we should really be walking in Scotland. Instead, we've ended up at the races, at the insistence of my guest, Chris Brasher.
So Chris, this is what it's all about, eh?
Absolutely. In the next few minutes, then you discover. But I mean, the point about him is whether he's got his mind on the race.
Well, he's looking good. How are you feeling?
Bloody awful.
Chris is a person of enormous energy. He's been passionate about athletics, orienteering, walking and journalism. Now it's owning racehorses. Today one of them, River Lossie, is running in the biggest race of his career, the Heineken Gold Cup. Wilderness walker not, Chris wasn't going to miss it.
Calm it, Jimmy, for God's sake.
What, is that Jimmy out in front?
Yes,
oh,
yes,
hell.
I know. Now he's 4 lengths up, you see.
Yeah.
On this ground, you've got to keep him.
Oh, he's off. He's off.
Is he all right? You bloody idiot, Loss. Jimmy's all right. Another lad. Well, it was second fence, third fence. He'll get it right one day. One day.
There's always the hills.
Yeah, yes, exactly.
A day late, but we're on the move at last. Fortunately, Chris loves the Cairngorms almost as much as he does racing. This is Britain's only Arctic wilderness and some of our most environmentally sensitive land. We'd planned a route that would take us to Brereach, along the high ground to Cairn Toul, before descending into the pass of the Lairig Ghru. We'll then make our way up onto the highest summit, Ben Macdui, and finally down to Loch Etchican and Glenderry. It's over 20 miles of tough walking, but that wouldn't worry a man who's organised the London Marathon and is one of Britain's rare Olympic gold medalists.
I became known, really, as the man who helped Roger to the 4-minute mile, and I thought, well, you know, you've got to do something yourself.
Yeah.
So, in the autumn of, 1955, I decided if I was going to be serious about the 56 Olympics, I had to give climbing up. I had to give smoking up, women up, and climbing up.
In that order.
Maybe if that 4-minute mile hadn't happened, I'd have gone on doing the things I liked instead of just athletics for a year. And I'd have never won the Olympics, because on a thing like that, if you're going to aim to be the best in the world, you've really got to hone your mind to a very, very sharp edge and do nothing else.
What sort of training did you do in those days, Chris?
Well,
was it anything like athletes today?
No, it was far less, really. I mean, I should think it would be about a quarter or a third of what they're doing now.
Did you feel that you were in with a chance of winning?
A year before the Olympics, I went to Moscow, and when I got a time then that was in the world's top 10, and I thought that if I did concentrate, then if I was in the top 10 in the world, there's no reason why I shouldn't be in the top 6, in the top 3, and get a medal. And if you're going for a medal, well, you better, might as well make it a gold one, mightn't you? That's marvellous, isn't it? Look at that. Woo.
Still a bit of snow up there.
It'd be nice to ski down off that.
Ah, it looks good, doesn't it?
In fact, I think I can see somebody has.
Better, a wee bit out of the wind here.
Much better, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it immediately gets warmer.
Yeah. You know, Chris, I think you've probably done more in your life than anybody else I've ever met. What
Well, I'm bloody old, you know. I'm 67.
It's almost as though you have this passion to be number one.
Well, I think you've got to, if there's no point in going into anything unless you do it properly. There's a marvellous two lines that I govern my life, and I think are marvellous. They come from Robert Browning. Ah, but a man's reach should exceed his grasp. Or what's a heaven for?
Yeah.
Right. And you've got to be, you know, you've got to be reaching up there beyond what you can grasp, and that's where you get the huge satisfaction. I mean, I think that's part of the attraction of things like the London Marathon. Or people don't think that they can do the toughest event in the Olympic calendar. And then they see others doing it on television. And they think, well, maybe I can. Maybe I can reach beyond what I thought was the possible. And that's the whole, I mean, the whole history of man, isn't it? That reaching beyond what he thought was possible.
As you might guess, Chris Brasher isn't someone to take no for an answer, and in recent years he's been outspoken in his fight to save our wild places. The ascent up to Bray Reach suited him well. Here you're part of the landscape. Dramatic corries, deep glens and high plateau. It's an unpredictable area where winter is never far away, even in April.
It's these mixed days, you know, and I think when you get about 15 climates in 15 hours, that's part of the attraction. I mean, what would it be like if it was blazing sunshine the whole time?
Oh, it'd be nice. Hard work, eh?
It is. It is, but we can't be all that far from the summit now.
Looks good, look. Cairngorms,
Yeah.
Ben Vane, and Ben Macdui with his cap on. They're big, aren't they?
When I was brought up, there was none of this being politically correct and everything. I always regarded mountains as feminine, perhaps because they can change their mood as quickly as women can. And, you know, when I was a young man, you were either known as an ankle man, you fancied their ankles, or a bottom man, or a bosom man. I've always been a bosom man. And the thing I like about these Cairngorms is they are marvellous, great, billowing breasts of mountains. You can't beat them.
Well, you're going to get yourself a very bad reputation. I was always described you as Chris Brasher, athlete, businessman, conservationist, but I'm saying I'm going to have to change that.
Definitely.
Chris Brasher, sexist, bruiser, lecturer. Yeah, all right. You said it, not me.
You're revealed.
Oh, that looks good.
Looks very good. Is this the top or is that the top over
top's
there?
over there. I think we're on a big cornice here.
Yes.
Let's not go too far to the left.
Well, we can't be more than 100 feet off the summit, I would think.
I wouldn't have thought so. Whew. There she is.
Now, not too near that edge, Cameron. The older I get, the more I save a life. You know?
Oh, it's all right. It's just a big snowbank.
Yeah.
It's not actually a cornice. Oh, it's clearing forest, Chris. Look. How's that for timing? Woo!
Hey!
Just watch you don't get blown away. suddenly drops away. Do you see that? Suddenly there's nothing but air. Oh, wow.
Oh, every summit. Blimey, look at that. What's that?
That's Cairn Toul.
When this was a glacier, it must have been a majestic glacier. I mean, just carving the rocks out at the top there. Total length must have been 10 miles at least, isn't it? And then, of course, it retreated, and then you got the glaciers in each of the hanging valleys as they now are. I mean, that where that Lochen is, that was probably one of the very last glaciers scooping out where the water is now. But look at the waterfall coming down from it. Blimey. Now, no matter, 1 second you can hardly speak because of the wind, and the next second it's calm and come on.
I'm going for it.
Oh, my knees getting old.
All right, you're all right. Oh, get going again.
Oh, look at that. Blimey. We're getting a few different days in one.
It's lovely.
Our route now takes us along the high tops with views into some of the most spectacular corries in the Cairngorms. But losing height is unavoidable, and our descent is by corridor into the Lairig Ghru. Even today it's an atmospheric setting, walking alongside the infant River Dee.
It's kind of hard to imagine this wee stream here flowing out down past Balmoral, down Royal Deeside, and becoming the big majestic river at Aberdeen with the docks and the fishing port and all the rest of it.
It'd be quite difficult to cross here without getting wet.
Well, I don't know whether I'm happy about it or not, but there's a bridge here.
I mean, we could cross that and just take the socks off and...
Are you suggesting that's what we do?
Well, since there is a bridge, and I don't want to get my boots wet since they're still dry...
Hey, we've still got a long way to go.
We might as well use it. It's a well-constructed bridge, this. And this is not such a small step for one old man.
In grey, dull weather like this, the Lairig Ghru can look bleak and forlorn. Yet concealed in these rocks and burns is a rich heritage of legend and folklore. For centuries this route has linked one side of the Cairngorms with the other. But this is a high-level pass and has claimed lives.
The story goes there were 3 tailors from Speyside, and they made a bet that on Hogmanay they would dance 3 jigs, one at the Dell of Rothiemurchus, one at the Dell of Abernethy, and one at Delmore on the other side of the Cairngorms in Braemar. So Hogmanay came round and they set off and they did their dance in Rothiemurchus, danced their jig in Abernethy, and making their way through the Lairig Ghru here.
And had a
to
few
Braemar.
drams by then, I
Well,
would
no
think.
doubt.
Yeah.
Making their way through, they were caught in a violent storm, and they sheltered behind a stone just down there, called the, which is now called the Clachlan Tailor, because they died in the storm. And this burn that we're following up here is called the Old Clachlan Tailor.
No doubt they might have died fairly happily and boozily, I would think.
Pretty cold though.
Oh, yes. Not the best thing to try to go through the mountains when you're half cut.
No.
I mean, there have been some ferocious storms on around the New Year. That infamous one on Ben Alder, where there were 3 men and 1 woman, and the woman was the only man who came out of it alive.
The woman was the only man.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, there you go. They say that about women, don't they?
A stronger sense of survival and an extra layer of subcutaneous fat, which helps.
I think I've got that as well. Listen, I've been a bit puzzled walking along with you, and I'm a wee bit concerned, I must be honest. How come your rucksack is so tiny and mine's so big? I know I've got the tent, but for goodness sake, what have you got in there?
I've got a sleeping bag. I've got a heavy fleece, stove. You've got to keep it below 25 pounds in order to be enjoyable.
So, I mean, do you take this to extremes? Do you cut the handle off your toothbrush and things like that?
Oh, I cut the half the handle. Now, it's not extremes. It's just doing everything so that it's as light as possible. I mean, that's why I invented lightweight boots, because 1 pound on your feet is equivalent of 4 or 5 pounds on your back. Up Ben Macdui, we lift an extra pound on each foot up 4,000 whatever it is. The amount of energy expended is huge, and therefore my philosophy is that of Shipton and Tillman, which is travel light, travel far, travel in comfort. Actually, I've added the travel in comfort because those two didn't.
These were the great explorers from the
great mountaineers of the
40
30s and 40s. In fact, it was Shipton who found the way into the Western Cwm on Everest, which led to the first ascent in 1953.
Trudging up the Taylor Burn is as good a way as any of reaching the summit of Britain's second highest mountain. It's almost 2,500 feet from the Lairig Ghru to the top of Ben Macdui. This is the very heart of the Cairngorms, and if anywhere in these islands resembles a high Arctic plateau, this is it.
Look at all these windbreaks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
I think it's probably a throwback to the war when apparently an officer and 3 men spent the entire war up here. Not the same
heavens.
officer and 3 men, but different ones. So.
Yeah. And they had their own windbreak to get away from each other, I should think. What an existence.
Climbing up there, I feel like sitting down behind a windbreak for a while. Anyway, here we go. Ben Macdui, 4,300 feet.
Second highest?
Yeah. After you, sir.
They don't need these trig points any longer.
No.
All the blood and sweat and toil that put them up. I mean, look at this, just lifting in time. Cairngorm, Ben Bay with the lumps on it.
Yeah.
Ben Avord and Ben Arn just behind.
Look, I tell you, there's a direction indicator down there.
Yeah.
Let's go and have a look at that. And we can just identify exactly what we're seeing. Then we won't make any mistakes. This has been here for a few years.
Lammermuirs are just above Glasgow.
No, they're not. They're south of Edinburgh.
South of Edinburgh, so they are.
93 miles. 93 miles, and we should see
This is fantastic.
Morven Caithness. How far is that? 200 and something miles? No, 81 miles.
Yeah.
81 miles. Ben Avord North Dock.
I mean, it looks as if you could do about 4 strides and get there.
Yeah. Okay, that way.
Okay.
You know, there was a time when it was thought that Ben Macdui was the highest mountain in Britain. And then there was a resurvey, and they discovered that Ben Nevis was 106 feet higher. So the locals from Speyside wanted to come and build a great big tower up here.
It's much better to be second highest, and you don't get quite so many tourists on top of you.
From the summit of Ben Macdui, it's downhill all the way. It's a gentle descent that takes you past Loch Etchican and eventually leads to Glenderry. But even at the end of April, these eastern slopes hold a good covering of snow, and you can never forget what a potentially dangerous place this is. Up here, winter can strike at any time of the year.
This really is Arctic stuff, isn't it?
I was just thinking that. Scott of the Antarctic.
That's really one of the great features of the Cairngorms, isn't it? This Arctic feel, especially at this time of the year.
Well, I mean, it's the nearest thing you can get to Baffin Island, Spitsbergen, northern Norway. But it's also, you know, I think important for people that you actually still know that there is somewhere in our overpopulated and overcrowded island that there are places like this where you can go and get away from absolutely everything.
There is an area, isn't it, where you really do have to be fairly well skilled.
Well, it's not an area where you learn your trade. You've got to have done all that. I came across here when in my days as a journalist, when those kids died on the plateau, and I was with a photographer who'd been on Everest, and he got hypothermia, i.e. the business where you're cool until you die. And we just made it over the top, and once you can get going, once you can move fast, then suddenly the body starts to act again. But that's, you know, can happen to the best of men like that. Because here it's primitive. You're back to where we all came from, where it's a battle for survival.
The Cairngorms have a reputation for unpredictability. Quickly changing conditions and ferocious storms have cost the lives of many walkers and climbers. But in a different mood, these hills give some of the best views to be found anywhere.
Oh, what a viewpoint.
It's tremendously clear today. It's that lovely,
Oh, it's
crisp,
unbelievable.
fantastic panorama.
Look at that over there, the great gouge out of the plateau. Would that be the top of Glenderry? Just over there.
Yes, that's right. Glenderry down there, and then it rises up onto the Moyne Moor between Ben Vrek and Ben Achorn, and then it rises up to Ben Avoord.
And then beyond that, Ben Arn.
Yeah, yeah.
I did a long day once, about 25 miles, got down to a pub the other side. And he said, which do you want first, the pint, the bath, or the steak?
And what did you take?
A pint first, and then a pint up to the bath, and then a steak afterwards.
Ah, great.
This is good going. And I wish I could go uphill as fast as this.
Oh, you might get down this bit. Yeah, it's too soft. What a great spot.
Oh, that gets the blood going.
Yeah. Brilliant. Look at that backdrop.
Now. Oh, blimey.
Isn't that good?
Isn't that incredible?
Just have to, I think we're actually on a loch here. I think we're on the water.
Oh. Oh, well, walk on water.
Oh, you've done enough things in your life, why not that as well?
Now,
Oh, we might get across here.
I think we could get across there.
Yeah. You've got gaiters on anyway, haven't you?
Yeah.
Good. No poles help.
Oh.
Well done.
Hey. What a. It's much easier with sticks.
Yeah. It's a sort of third and a fourth leg.
Exactly. People seem to think that sticks are for old men only, but the professional walking guides in their 20s and 30s in the Alps use them because it takes 30% of the weight off your knees.
Well,
You've
that's
only
right.
got one pair of knees
Yeah,
to last you a lifetime.
yeah. And if you use them when you're 30
Yeah.
or in your 20s, it saves a lot of problems later. You're right. Woo!
For most of our journey, we've been on the Mar Lodge estate. Since 1995, this important area has been owned by the National Trust for Scotland. Their purchase followed 4 years of uncertainty, and Chris Brasher was instrumental in an earlier attempt to buy the estate by a consortium of conservation groups. He's often been at the forefront of such action, and he helped form the John Muir Trust and later his own Chris Brasher Trust.
Land ownership in Scotland is a disgrace. I mean, here, somebody who wants to take on a croft of 10 acres, 5 acres even, has to prove himself or herself to the Crofters Commission. You want to take on 55,000 acres. That's what, 27 times Richmond Park. And all you've got to have is a big enough checkbook. There is no control whatsoever. No other country would allow anybody to come in from anywhere in the world, and as long as they have their checkbook to pay the money. I think it's a disgrace, and there is only one way that you can overcome this, and that is for organisations like the National Trust of Scotland to actually own the land. One thing I found, particularly in journalism, it's not enough to state those views. If you want to get something done, then you have actually got to go and do it yourself. I mean, there are too many people who have taken the heart out of the Highlands, and it's time we put some of it back in.
Taming the Wilderness next on BBC Two in Gardener's World.
Into thin air